Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or whenever you should happen to find this. Welcome to the Quote of Arms podcast, where we talk about our favorite Magic the Gathering tribes, what they do, how they win, and how we connect to them. Today, my special guest is...
This would be Lenny, also known as Ajani's gay Pridemate. I write for EDH Rec. I write the Power Sync article series about taking really powerful commanders and giving them fun, whimsical brews. And I'm also one quarter of the Scrap Trawlers EDH not YouTube. Oh yeah, it is a YouTube channel too. YouTube channel, Twitch stream. You can find us on Twitch TV, Scrap Trawlers. And I also am a member of the party in Path and Prophecy, a Magic and D&D crossover D&D game, every other Monday on the Venture Maidens Twitch channel.
Wonderful. Awesome to have you on. And the the tribe we're talking about today is?
We are talking about fungi and probably doing a little bit of discussion about saprolings, because you can't have one without the other.
Well, those are tokens. They are created by fungi, but we are absolutely not supporters of non-fungible tokens.
Right.
Okay. Just getting that out there. Because we had fungi and we have tokens, no NFTs here.
Right.
Even though that was kind of teasing NFTs. Whatever. That's an NFTs. Let's throw that out. Anyways. Just terrible jokes. Alright, so... what are fungi in Magic?
So typically, fungi in Magic tend to be associated with a specific type of fungi. They call them phthalids. These originally showed up all the way back in Fallen Empires.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, kind of cool lore. They were made to be like a food source. And so they had a very specific sort of thing that they do. And then since then, they've kind of expanded. Although I think actually the first fungus in Magic, I want to say, might either be Fungusaur or Mold Demon from even prior to Fallen Empires.
So they go back pretty far into the game, and they are designed around how they work with so they're phthalids, and they're designed around how they work with saprolings. How do they work with saprolings?
So they tend to make... we could start with the archetypical phthalid. It gets a spore counter on each of your upkeeps, and you can remove 3 spore counters to create a saproling creature token. And then a lot of them have effects that allow you to sacrifice a saproling to do something. There's one Thorn Phthalid, which sacrifices to do, let's see, let me pull it up. There we go. Thorn Phthalid. Oh, that just removes 3 spore counters. Okay, we're going to throw Thorn Phthalid right out there. Let's go with Elvish Farmer then, which is famously not a fungus, but it kind of follows that same line of you take off 3 spore counters and then you can sacrifice a saproling to gain 2 life.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of creation of tokens and then sacrificing these tokens.
Awesome. And so they have the creation and sacrifice of tokens. They have the accumulation of spore counters. And there actually was a commander that's designed around that from when they came back in the Time Spiral block. I built around that commander for a $50 deck tech.
Oh yeah, that would be Felon of Havenwood.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, fun lore bit is that Felon of Havenwood is actually the person who created the phthalids. It's even there on the flavor text where he says, "The sight of my phthalids still thriving is a bittersweet welcome to this cold waste," which is pretty metal.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like this guy a lot, even though I never got around to building him. He's 2/2 for 2 green mana. Each fungus gets +1/+1 for each spore counter on it. So there's a neat push and pull dynamic of your fungus are getting bigger,
Mm-hmm.
but if you want to make a saproling for that, then you have to basically weaken your fungus with him on the battlefield.
Mm-hmm.
And then he also has black and green, exile a fungus card from a graveyard, and put a spore counter on each fungus on the battlefield.
So, his abilities do kind of work together. He is an excellent commander for this type of a strategy. And one of the things so my deck was built around basically aggro counters using some of the War of the Spark proliferate cards and
Yeah,
some earlier
proliferate is.
proliferate.
Oh yeah, proliferate is definitely one of those mechanics that like they love. Fungus love that. I mean, they love it in real life too. So.
Mm-hmm. So, going a little bit further into Thelon, or Thelon, or whichever way which you pronounce it, is actually one of the original cards that caused a problem in Commander in terms of color identity. Because originally, the color identity had to do only with the mana cost. But then you have some cards that have activated abilities of a different color. How do those work? So, Thelon was one of the original cards that changed that rule to make it so that activated abilities in your commander were part of the color identity.
No, I did not actually know that. But yeah, he's definitely an old one that's been around in the format for, I think, as long as it's been a format, right?
Yeah, about that, because it was the format was still kind of beginning when World Wake came out. And I know that because that's when I got into it. And I got into it during World Wake because of Chase the Mind Sculptor. When GTMS came out, that basically priced me out of pretty much any format other than Commander.
I mean, yeah, that's fair. I wasn't really playing too much, but I was hanging out with some friends at the time. At that particular time, we spent a lot of time complaining about Cawblade.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of vicariously hated Jace the Mind Sculptor.
Yeah, at the time I was Pro Tour grinder. Yeah, mostly Pro Tour, or grinding for the Pro Tour and trying to play FNM every week, and was one of the better players. But when I realized just how intrinsically powerful the card was and how much it was going to cost to get a set of them, it just wasn't worth it to me.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I was in college at that time and poor college kid stuff.
Oh, yeah. So, it's kind of interesting that Thelon actually does kind of, with the color identity thing, hit like the vast majority. I think it's kind of unsurprising that fungus would be mostly black and green since they
Mm-hmm.
tend to be like associated with decay and, but like also it is life as well that sort of directly causes decay. So that's
Mm-hmm.
kind of like a cool little bit of flavor that I like, and I'm glad that it kind of shows up in that. Although they also kind of show up in green, or sorry, in white and blue. Well, not blue. They just also show up in white because we have
Mm-hmm. Pallid
another
Mycoderm.
fungus commander with Gave, Guru of Spores, who's
Oh yeah.
notorious for being a disgusting combo engine.
Yeah, and that's one where you put that out there and people are going to make assumptions about your deck, even if you try to tell them it's only fungi and and spore counters. But that does put in Pallid Mycoderm, which is a nice little example of a card that actually taught me a word because I didn't know Pallid was a word.
Mm,
But I like to use that word now to describe people who are like somebody who passes out and such.
yeah. It's Paladin of Mycoderm is like I think a really compelling reason to add white to like any kind of fungus deck though. Just the sacrifice a sapperling you control, each creature you control that's a fungus or sapperling getting +1/+1.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's a game ender right there. If you've got like a nice big token army, and then uh, they also have another one that's another one of my personal favorites. Is also not a fungus, but hangs out with them because I guess they're cool. Is Mycologist, which is the color shifted version of Elvish Farmer. So same kind of thing. You can sacrifice your sapperlings to gain 2 life, which
Mm-hmm.
that's not nothing. That can keep you in a game.
Oh, absolutely. So we've talked about them in the early days of Magic. We talked about them in the Time Spiral block, which was also set on Dominaria. So then we get to the return to Dominaria. And what did that do for Thalids?
Well, they kind of just ditched that whole spore counter thing, but
Yeah.
it did give us like some really good just more fungus and more about like directly creating Zapperlings.
Mm-hmm.
It also gave us stuff like Spore Crown Thallid, which each other creature you control that's a fungus or a Sapperling gets a +1/+1, which is just darn good. And
Yeah,
then
it's good to have words.
there's Slimefoot.
Mm-hmm.
So we got this commander called Slimefoot the Stowaway, and it's one, a black and a green. And whenever a Sapperling you control dies, it deals 1 damage to each opponent, and you gain 1 life. And you can pay 4 mana and make a 1/1 green Sapperling. This also, like Gave, kind of turned into a sort of combo aristocrats kind of commander, and you can basically put in like a thing that doubles tokens in an Ashnod's altar, and then you're off to the races to just take the game.
Yeah, that's kind of the
actually have
thing,
one
is
of
that
these
it's
in my meta.
basically a 1-card engine. So thus far, we have 2 different solid fungi commanders, but they also don't need the fungi cards to be good. And then you have Thelon, which is the one that I wanted to build around, or that I chose to build around because it's the one that actually cared about them. Which makes sense because he's the one who created them, right?
Yeah. Like, yeah, absolutely. So I think what kind of happens with this tribe, which is a little unfortunate, is because you're into making creatures and then sacrificing creatures for benefit, like you're kind of spending a lot of time in Value Town, and like, you know what, all the highways on Value Town have signs pointing you over to Combo City if you really want to go there. And so like the more you tune like a fungus Sapperling kind of deck, the more it kind of falls into aristocrats value and possibly like game ending combos.
Yeah.
So like, and just like Gave and Slimefoot really just want you to go there. Me personally, I built an Atraxa fungus deck.
Well, that does go back to the column that you write, which is
Power Sync. Yeah, although I did not feature Atraxa for this one. That's my other Atraxa deck because I have 2.
yeah.
So what I like is, well, what Atraxa adds to that is that proliferate. That's so nice. So you can get a counter on a thing and then get a counter again. And then it's just really easy to start stacking a bunch of counters, making a bunch of things.
Mm-hmm.
And then adding, while traditionally it doesn't go into blue for fungus, any of that stuff, it's really useful to have blue to get more proliferate. Blue's great for messing with counters, and there's this card called Paradox Haze, which lets you take an extra upkeep, which, if you look at all these Thallids, it's like everything is happening on your upkeep, which, you only get one of those unless...
Well, you don't want to go too far down that route or down that road, but you have Paradox Haze. You can also put in the Sphinx.
Yeah. Although personally, I don't play the Sphinx because I keep getting that card wrong and how it's supposed to go. And if I can't understand a card, I'm just not going to play it.
Yeah. That's where Xynum is pretty good at that one, but then you do start doing crazy things like copying it. But blue does add in some more proliferate, especially if you're using some of the cards from like Contentious Plan, Flux Channeler, and Exorable Tide, adding in more of those effects. Tezzer's Gambit, Steady Progress. Those are some nice ways to continue those proliferate engines that I have in my Thelon deck, but I don't necessarily have enough of them necessarily. We were talking before this about how powerful it is to have functional reprints or additional copies of effects, which is a lot of where my series is about, which is trying to find those different effects and categories of effects and evaluate cards based on their synergy with the commander. So that's my These Cards Do Work column that I write for EDH Rec.
Yeah, unfortunately with all that, like there just aren't that many cards that give you these kinds of weird proliferate things. I mean, there's a good amount, but like compared to what some other effects you get, it's not an effect you get very much in every set. One actually that I'd like to go over in my Craxtolist that I like to use is clock spinning.
Nice. It's an
Uh,
excellent Oathbreaker signature spell as well.
oh yeah, that'd be really good in Oathbreaker.
Yep.
But yeah, just a 1 blue instant with buyback of 3. Choose a counter on target permanent or suspended card. Remove that counter from that permanent, or put another one of those counters on it. Just like a nice little way to get like a little bit extra out of it. And then it's so crazy good with Flux Channeler out. Like, oh my god.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, well, that starts to get a little nutty.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, that's what you kind of got to do.
Mm-hmm.
Although I'm actually looking at my list and realizing I have like 6 blue cards in the whole list.
Yeah, that's the thing about adding colors to an existing strategy. Sometimes you just need the effects, and you put a commander at the helm that kind of work. It kind of works with them.
Yeah.
Maybe not perfect because you're not using every element of that card, but you don't necessarily need to. It kind of reminds me of my Simic Burn that has Varel at the helm, but Varel's really just there to block or to occasionally double the counters on an Everflowing Chalice or something.
Yeah.
It's not
I
really a
came.
Varel deck. It's a deck with Varel as the commander.
Yeah. I like to me that's like totally normal because like I came up in Commander in the days of the Tuck rule and the days where the Legend rule worked that a clone spell was a kill for a commander.
Yep.
So like it's just kind of more natural for me to be like, yeah, like it doesn't have to, I don't want to build the entire deck around the commander. It doesn't mean I won't, but like I'm always deeply uncomfortable with having that kind of commander deck because I just am so used to like, yeah, that just like commanders just did not stick on the field.
Yeah, the counter to that to me is I look at how cheap some of the modern commanders are, and one thing I do is I look for commanders that are relatively low cost, so I can get them out. Like if something's more than 3, I really have to think hard about whether I want it to be a commander. And I also put in a lot more mana and ramp than I would have otherwise. It sort of changed my deck building philosophy with that.
Yeah.
Like people ask, okay, I put 40 lands and 10 ramp spells in, ramp or fixing. And that seems like a lot. Like half my deck is mana, but if my deck is designed around that commander, I need to be able to get it out and get it out multiple times. I need to be able to cast multiple spells on a turn. So I would say, if anything, people are not putting enough mana into their decks.
Yeah, I tend to run 37, 38, although that is very deck dependent because some just kind of don't need it. But yeah, I mean, I would say that you wouldn't necessarily be wrong to do 40 and 10 on ramp. Just because, like, it it takes a bit of time. I know for me, like, I have a starting point and then I start playing the deck to just kind of see how it feels and how it works. Like, I have Marath that's like more like 40 and 12 or 13 ramp
Oh
spells
yeah.
just because like it just you can do so much with your mana.
Mm-hmm.
But it's sort of like looking at what the commander is asking.
Yeah, and sometimes if you're deciding a different power level, maybe you scale back some of what you're doing, or maybe you put a little bit more in and remove some of something else. Like with one of the adjustments I recently made to my Azusa deck was, you know what? I want this to be a somewhat lower powered deck because it's kind of silly. So I'm going to reduce its ability to remove what opponents are doing and just make it single-minded. And that deck is already pretty ambitious. What it's trying to do is get a bunch of lands out and then animate them and then use an overrun effect.
Yeah.
So other people are still trying to get, like, you're casting a Llanowar Elf. Well, I've had my Llanowar Elf out the whole time.
Yeah.
I didn't have to spend mana on it.
It's kind of funny because, like, honestly, going back to the whole like fungus thing, and I'll continue to talk about phthalates, even though there are other kinds of fungus out there.
Oh yeah.
This is one of the things that you have to learn to accept is that they are slow.
They can
Like,
be. My Thelon deck can
Yeah.
actually be really fast.
yeah, I feel like that's true. With Thelon, you can kind of, if you get like a good mix of them, you can kind of like just exile stuff, and then suddenly you've got a big thing. At least with my Atraxa deck, I find it's really slow, except for the times where if it does its thing a little bit, then it starts to snowball. But I think that's kind of generally the case. Like, as you start adding them up, and like, we didn't even talk about the ones that came out in the time spiral block, where they do things like they put a spore counter on each one you control, each fungus you control, and then, or like the ones that let you just remove them for 2 instead of 3.
So
And then,
okay.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, continue, please.
So, like, yeah, I think those kind of start to add more of that tribal element that I think was kind of, that's like in the development of the tribe where we actually start to see it sort of put together some identity, which is why we're talking about that. I mean, aside from that, they have a whole like life and death sort of thing. And then I was about to go into Maskwood Nexus, but I bet Maskwood Nexus comes up all the time in this.
Oh yeah. Well, are you talking about on the podcast? No, it actually doesn't come up that often.
Huh. Okay. Well, I guess, like, in the case of these, like, this particular tribe, at least this section of the tribe, gets very interested in Maskwood Nexus, because this is where I think the tribe gets super unique, is that it is in one tribe, but it's not super focused on caring about its tribe. It cares about another tribe. And then things like Maskwood Nexus, like, just kind of break that whole thing down. And then, like, once all of your phthalates or all of your fungus are also saprolings, just stuff can just go off the rails. Yeah.
Oh yeah, stuff can, so they can get pretty nasty when that happens. There are some cards like Fungal Plots, which I remember liking a lot, even just when it was in Standard, as a card that was able to get late game card advantage and also produce bodies. Namada Grove Guardian is one. I actually had it built around it as a Treefolk commander. Treefolk and Saprolings. But it gets really nasty too.
Yeah, that's in my deck. That one is a game ender. Like, Namada Grove Guardian, I think, is a card that a lot of people sleep on. Like, yeah, it's 6 mana, but like, this is a card that is honestly, in the right situations, just capable of winning a game on its own.
Anything that has an unbounded effect like that, I am absolutely concerned about. It's also an excellent mana sink. So Namada is a 6 mana Treefolk legend from Planeshift, I believe.
Yes, Planeshift.
2 generic and a green, you get a 1/1 Saproling, and then you can sack a Saproling. It doesn't have to be a token, but it can be. All Saprolings get +1/+1 until end of turn. And we were talking about having Maskwood out, now all your fungi are also Saprolings.
Yeah. So then your whole deck gets super huge.
And
then, if you happen to have the incredibly expensive card Doubling Season, which is another one that, like, this tribe really loves because it's very into tokens and it's very into counters.
Yep. There's a few different related, somewhat functional reprints.
Yeah. Yeah, and many of those are also very expensive.
Yeah, and since we're dipping into white by using Atraxa instead of Thelon, then you wind up having Anointed Procession as well.
Yeah.
So you can
So
start
with those,
making
I'm kind of a
absolutely ridiculous
mindset of
numbers.
Oh, sorry, I was talking over you.
Oh, that's okay. So you have absolutely ridiculous numbers. You have, I think, a 5th different functional reprint with, since you're adding in blue, you can put in the twins from the Quandrix Precon.
Oh, Adrix and Nev, yeah.
So I think you're up to 5 of those effects.
Yeah, and that's, not even mentioning things like Second Harvest or any other populate effects that you want to use. Like, it's possible to just get, like, just ridiculous numbers of tokens. Although for those token builders out there, like, I would say, like, don't just jam, like, all 5 in. I feel like it's more important to make sure that you have things to make the tokens. And then just, like, 2 or 3 to just kind of spice it up and to just hit that, like, really let things go crazy. Because I've seen a lot of token decks that will just do that, and they'll be like, all right, as soon as I can make 1 token, and then they just never draw a token maker.
The exception to that, I would say, is if your commander has an ability that makes tokens. So that you always have access to it. So I believe all 5 of them are in Bant. So if you have a Bant commander that's able to make tokens, then you're always going to have access to it.
Yeah.
So we've talked about Namada as one way to just mass overrun. How else would a deck like this win?
Well, we're in black, and there's a lot of them, as we've mentioned many times, that care about sacrificing creatures. So naturally, we can go to our Blood Artists, our Zulaport Cutthroats. If we want to stay on theme, we've got Slimefoot. He'll do it for us. Another good one I like, Poison Tip Archer. Just, all of those. Creature dies, everybody loses a life. I'm personally partial to Mazarek, Crawl Death Priest. It's a 3 and a black and a green, flying 2/2 insect. Whenever a player sacrifices another permanent, put a 1/1 counter on each creature you control. That will get very, very big. And downright crazy if we're sacrificing stuff to Pallid Mycoderm or to Namada. So usually that's like another good vector for winning, is to just overrun with that or just aristocrating people out. One on my maybe board is if you're making a ton of tokens, there's this common from Rivals of Ixalan called Gruesome Fate. It's 2 and a black. Each opponent loses 1 life for each creature you control.
Nice. So there's a few different ways to just do a lot of single shot damage like that, but also some those longer term draining effects. You could go with overrun type effects. Just a few different ways to win with tokens once you've leveraged that large board state.
Definitely. One of the things I like about token decks is that you can kind of set up, like, I like to think of them as, and I'm not the first person to say this, but, like, that you don't just think of tokens as creatures, but, like, think of them as cash that you can spend at different stores that you can set up. And I think that's what I like about the Fungus Tribe a lot, also, is that you have all of these stores that you can, like, kind of go to. You can have the life gain one, the mana one, the card draw one, and, like, all of them show up, like, in the Thalids. Like, so, you can, if you want to be a tribal purist, I am not. Truth be told, I'm actually really not much of a tribal guy. That's definitely my husband's territory.
Why are you here? No, I'm kidding.
I don't know. Maybe we should. He's only been on one Magic podcast.
Well, I mean, you can be out here anytime. I'm actually doing sign-ups for the 4th season right now.
Okay, I'll talk to him about that. Could be fun. But, yeah, like, so that's just kind of, like, one of the things I enjoy about it, is it can be that sort of little cogs in the machine thing. And I think not a lot of tribes offer that.
Yeah, it honestly feels a little bit like Servos and Thopters, where you're just making a lot of small things to fuel an engine, and you're using them as, like, as you said, cogs in the machine, as, like, pieces of something bigger.
Yeah.
So sometimes they can't see the forest for the sapperlings.
Exactly.
So, what is your connection to this tribe?
So, couple things. this is actually a little bit of personal Lenny trivia. I don't talk about this much, but like a few people that are really close to me know this. Fungus like makes me deeply uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Like irrationally, like I am irrationally terrified of it. Um, so like moldy bread, I just like if it's been touched by like the tiniest bit, the whole loaf has to go. I will not even deal with
Yeah.
it. Uh, and so like even mushrooms, I'm not like I'll eat them because like I don't know, it's you know how it is with food. Sometimes you can just kind of dissociate everything else that's going on.
Mm-hmm.
But just like the idea of it, and just not even the idea of it, just like it just makes me uncomfortable. Like uh, the idea of stuff growing on me, just I don't like it, and
Mm-hmm.
the idea of cordyceps is absolutely terrifying. And so, in a way, like this tribe and just like playing this stuff is kind of what is me just kind of like immersing myself in that and trying to kind of overcome it. Because like if you look at the art, and honestly, if you look at like real fungus out there, like it looks, some of it is just like downright alien looking.
Mm-hmm.
It's like some freakish stuff. Like what are those like devil's palm finger things where it's like the weird slimy stuff and it's like got all those tentacles and it's just like, and that's a real thing that didn't come from another planet. Okay,
Makes sense, especially when you put Atraxa at the lead, who kind of looks like an alien overlord.
right? So yeah, it's kind of that, and like it actually started because I had a Golgari deck in high school. This was this was back when we were excited about getting spoilers for Invasion. Just so you have an idea of how far this goes back.
Yeah.
And so yeah, like I made a green black Sapperlings deck, and then I also had a recurring nightmare and a survival of the fittest, and I would like do stuff like, you know, pitch like devouring Strosis or something, and then, you know, reanimate it with recurring nightmare. And then I had a little sapperling dude, so I could sacrifice that to my you know, to get that thing back, or to like keep making creature tokens so I could swing in with my 9/9 trampling demon thing. So like that was like a really good, well-respected deck back when I was in high school, and we were playing our 60-card casual, playing our soon-to-be reserve list cards unsleeved on the lunch tables with chipped paint. So that's kind of my personal connection to the tribe.
Nice. So, is there any? So that's your connection to the fungi part of it, or the sapling part, or both?
Both actually. Like it's sort of the overcoming the fear of dealing with fungus and just exposing myself to the weird, freakish magic arts that they have put on there for these things, and then just also like playing with that sort of machine. I guess to elaborate a bit further, that is the deck that I kind of learned to appreciate putting together the machine in Magic.
Nice. What do you mean by
Yeah.
putting together the machine?
So it's kind of like how artifact decks are too. You know, you set up this thing, and like we didn't have like the I care about death triggers like a whole bunch, but we had, you know, you could like I said, I can play my ballad and I can play my survival, and then I can discard this thing and I can sacrifice this thing creature I just made to recurring nightmare to get the thing I discarded back, and then I can sacrifice creatures to keep my Strosis up, and I could sacrifice things to stay alive, and it's just like my deck has a lot of pieces that do a lot of things, and these sapperlings were kind of the cogs in the machine.
Nice.
And so, yeah, like it's just like it was just like a deck that does a lot of different things, and the cards form a cohesive whole, as opposed to say what I was building before, which was kind of more like almost like a limited deck. You know, I'd be like, oh, okay, yeah, that's a cool dragon. We'll put that in there. Like, I guess I need to like run something to destroy something, or I like this aura. We'll just slap it on here and attack with a creature that's flying. That was kind of like what Magic was for me until I started getting into this deck.
Nice. So when you're talking about putting the machine together, that's where I started off as a combo player. I did not understand combat at all. Because I started playing around Champions of Kamigawa last time they were there, right? considering we're recording this right after Neon came out. So a lot has changed since we were last in Kamigawa. But
Oh yeah.
last time we were in Kamigawa, damage went on the stack. Umezawa's Jit did all kinds of crazy shenanigans. Darksteel was relatively, not relatively new, but the Darksteel block and Mirrodin block was still out there, and so there were all these modular shenanigans, and I had no idea how any of that worked.
Hmm.
So I had my first deck was skeletons and demons because I opened a Kuro Pit Lord in my first ever booster pack. So I had skeletons to block on the ground, demons to fly over in the air. Then I made basically, the decks that I made were just attempts to try to circumvent the rules I didn't understand.
That makes sense. It was just like, I guess, I mean, we came up the game in very different times. Like,
Mm-hmm.
combo wasn't really like available when I was playing, like in the way it. At the time I had this black green deck, it was more so, but like I started out when Fallen Empires was new, and so like it wasn't really available in the same way.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that was just a wild time to be playing in general.
Oh yeah, a lot of people stopped. I started.
Yeah.
Story of my life, eh? Everybody's doing one thing, and I'm doing something different. But yeah, so I mean that's how my brain works. Is if the thing I'm trying to do doesn't work, then I'll try to do something completely different instead of just trying to be a bad version of what everybody else is doing.
Yeah. I think we're kind of cut from the same cloth in that way, in that we try to do weird stuff and separate ourselves from the pack with what we're doing. That's, for me personally, that's actually been kind of a hallmark of how I've been playing, even back in the day of 60 card casual. And
Mm-hmm.
I have some wild decks from 60 card casual that,
Oh yeah.
yeah. I mean, you could do some weird stuff that you just can't do in Commander when you have a 4 of a card.
Mm-hmm. But that was one of the best bits of advice I received from, I think it was from Pat Chapin. Because I play in the Michigan area and around Detroit. And I used to go to RIW quite a lot, and I used to do the grinding around, so around that area, RIW, Pandemonium, those places in and around Detroit. And I got the advice from Chapin to, whatever you're doing, or whenever you're brewing something, don't be a bad something else. That was when I think Jund was the dominant deck, Jund, the Cascade Jund deck, and I worked with my buddy to make a version that used like ball lightning effects, and because we wanted to just deal massive damage with the cards that we were able to resolve. The problem was we couldn't resolve them because we would have to keep discarding, and eventually we just discard the ball lightnings. So we wound up just being a bad version of the Jund deck because we weren't doing what the Jund deck did well, which was grinding out games by making opponents discard. So that was an important lesson. Never be a bad something else.
Yeah. It's interesting how that applies to Commander, because Commander is just like, it's like, that advice is really good when you're trying to hit a target, and Commander is just this bizarre moving target of that. But, I would say that, like, well, the way that applies is you really just want to know what you're setting out to do when you build a deck. And that's, like, it doesn't have to be a good, strong deck, but, the deck should be the deck that you want it to be. And I think that's something that a lot of people get lost on. Like, when I'm looking at, like, any of my Power Sync stuff, or, like, this particular Attracts the Thalids deck, I have some pretty bad cards in there. It's just that I really want to just have it sit, like, at a certain place and play, like, slow, fair, kind of almost battle cruiser-ish Commander, and just run a few weird cards. Although I do run some nasty cards that people would see if they actually see the deck list. They'd be like, Lenny, Ashnod's Altar for real, though?
But the idea being that you made it what you wanted it to be, not
Mhm.
just making concessions because it couldn't be something else.
Yeah. It, and in Commander, I think there's just a lot of different ways that you can be a bad something else. Like, it's not a powerful deck, but it's a good, like, silly tribal deck. And I think, I don't want it to be like a bad version of a deck that people have. Wow, I'm really floundering on this. Yeah, you got to keep it in check. It's like sometimes if you want a fun deck, that's the target you're trying to hit. You don't want to like overdo it and make a bad experience for people. That's where I'm going with that.
Yeah, what I'm getting at is you made an Atraxa fungi deck. It's not a bad version of Atraxa. It's an Atraxa fungi deck. It is what you wanted it to be,
Mm-hmm.
not what you settled for it being.
Exactly. Thank you. I'm going to steal that forever.
Okay, sure, sure. Feel free to steal that, but so. Somebody asked, "This deck is exactly what I wanted it to be." Now that's something that when people post their deck lists in the skull symbol, we say, "Okay, are you looking for feedback on this?" Sometimes they're just looking to share something that they're proud of.
Yeah.
And people start telling them, okay, this is how you can make your deck better. That's not what they wanted. So,
Yeah. When I do that, and not everybody has to do that, but occasionally I will post a deck in a list, and I want people to look at this and tell me how cool it is.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, look, I had a bad day. I just want you to tell me I'm a good deck builder.
Well, you can rest assured, no matter how bad the day is, you're always an awesome deck builder, a great friend, and an incredible writer.
Oh, thank you.
You're
Likewise.
welcome. Thank you. You're also a wonderful friend and a person I'm glad to know.
Yeah. I'm glad like we were able to connect like this. The whole pandemic thing is like such a trip because like
Yeah.
I probably just would have gone on playing Magic and not like met any of the cool people that I have met. And just yeah, I probably would still be playing Commander, but man, like it's just nice to kind of talk to someone like you who kind of gets like what I'm about and like understands like what I'm trying to do in the game, and like you're similarly trying to do the thing where
Mm-hmm.
you're making a deck that crafts an experience.
Yeah. Although, interesting thing is, if it wasn't for the pandemic and going on and doing the stuff online, I probably would have stopped playing.
Yeah, I could see that.
Um, really, the thing that was keeping me going for a while after I made the Pro Tour was going to tournaments and trying to get prizes for my students. Because I wanted to keep them playing. I wanted to get them, like, I would want to, when I would go into a tournament, I wasn't thinking about necessarily, like, oh, I want to win this because it'll lead to something good or cool for me. It was, okay, I want to win the box so that my students can draft it.
Yeah. Oh, that's really sweet.
Well, it gave me something to work for because I
Yeah.
wasn't working for the Pro Tour anymore because I had already achieved that, and also they were getting rid of that program. So the question came, okay, why am I bothering to play anymore? Why am I putting all
I've
the
never.
time, effort, money into this?
Yeah, that's actually something I've never done in my Magic career. Like, I think only got I've only ever played in 2 constructed tournaments ever.
Mm-hmm.
That just doesn't interest me because like I enjoy and always have enjoyed the self-expression in the game. But like I think
Yeah.
the tournament scene is super cool. It's just not for me. But like
Well, it's
I'm
not to say that there
honestly in awe
isn't
of anyone that gets
self-expression
that
in
far.
there. You're just also doing high-level things. Um,
Yeah.
so, for example, I won a modern pre-TQ with a deck that was designed around Tybalt, 2 mana Tybalt, and
Hmm.
it was ensnaring bridge burn with Tybalt.
Okay, I'm into that. I like this.
I mean I was the guy playing the decks where I would make top 8, and the judges would be reviewing the deck list and start laughing. Like, how did that even get here?
That's. I think that there is something to that. Oh, and yeah, it's kind of stepping a little too far to say like that there isn't self-expression in that arena, but I
Mm-hmm.
think there are limits to what you can be doing with your self-expression
Yeah.
in a way that just like you can't do some of the stuff that you can do on the kitchen table. Like I can't take my weird Thalids brew, green black Thalids survival of the fittest recurring nightmare brew to like
A legacy
an
tournament.
extended tournament, yeah, or a legacy tournament. And you know that's fine. Like I'm glad that there are places in the game for different sorts of things. That's one of the
Mm-hmm.
things I love about it. And I love that Commander kind of continues that legacy.
Yep. Well, that's where I was saying earlier that Commander was what got me back into Magic when I was about to leave it because of Jason Mind Sculptor. Because I had to play competitive, otherwise there wasn't a way to keep playing. The LGS
Yeah.
when I was in college ran FNMs, but that was about it in terms of the Magic scene. So when I was in the poor college kid phase, it became I have to do. I think it was. I think they did 4 rounds, and I had to do 3-1 or better. So 3-1 or 4-0 to be able to afford to play the next week.
That's some crazy pressure to just like I have to succeed or otherwise I'm not playing. Like,
Yeah.
my goodness.
Yeah, well, if I didn't,
Yeah,
if I got 2-2, or when I got that second loss, I knew it was going to be at least 2 weeks before I could play again.
yeah.
Which,
I know for me, Commander's also what brought me back into the game. Like I had been out, I just hadn't got rid of my cards. But
mhm.
it's really like for me, it's a throwback to the way that I used to love playing the game back in high school, like playing on those lunch tables, and we would just, you know, we weren't like, oh yeah, let's all get organized into two. It was like, you know, how
Mhm.
many people want to play Magic? And of course, we'd have some people that like, yo, I want to test this like, you know, tournament deck. So we had some people that wanted to do that, but then we also had people that just like, what sort of weird brew
Mhm.
do you want to bring? And we're all just like, we'll have like 3, 4, 5, 6 player group games at the lunch table, just like playing nonsense.
Oh yeah,
And
that's why I think that's why the games club when I was in high school went away from Yu-Gi-Oh. So in middle school it was all about Yu-Gi-Oh, and then in high school it kind of switched. Although I didn't get involved in the games club until a couple years in, but uh, yeah, the high school games club was all about Magic because of the fact that it was more open to multiplayer.
yeah, that's kind of like what hit it for me. And then you know that evolved into then like we're playing that, and then we're gonna go over to my house on Friday night. And we're gonna just play GoldenEye till like the sun comes up.
I love GoldenEye.
Yeah.
GoldenEye was really
Although,
what changed video games for me. GoldenEye and Pokemon.
yeah, that's fair.
Pokemon maybe a little bit more than GoldenEye, but that was the first time I got to see that video games could be an inclusive experience because Final Fantasy almost ruined video games for me. Because
Yeah,
I had a couple friends who were twins, and they basically had me over just because the parents didn't want them just playing with each other. So they would play Final Fantasy and pass the controller back and forth, and if their sister came downstairs, I'd talk with her or I'd play with their cat.
that sounds incredibly boring.
Yeah, well, they wanted me over so that they didn't get in trouble for not having friends, and
Mhm.
I didn't really know what a friend was, except that it got my parents off my back too. But they were at least people who wanted to spend time with me, which was different from most of the people at my elementary school.
Yeah,
Sorry if this is a little sad.
yeah, that's okay. We can fix it in post.
Whatever.
But yeah, I guess like for me, yeah, that's like high school is more where I started to socialize too. Like it's sort of like you kind of start coming into the person like a fully fledged person and like getting into the stuff that you want to. Although I was socializing playing Magic as early as 6th grade, But yeah, I mean, for me, that was kind of the same thing. Was like GoldenEye was really just like a fun way for everyone to come in and play. And I had been playing video games like well before that, but it was like for me. I mean, I was playing Final Fantasy, I was playing Chrono Trigger. I wasn't inviting people over to come and play those because like I didn't. My mom was. It's funny. My mom would not tolerate that. She would be like, "No,
Yeah.
you're going to go do something else. Like you are going to include your friends." I'm like, "Okay, that's fair." So it was nice to have a game that was we were able to do that. Even though my friends were super frustrated with me because I would always throw proximity mines on the body armor.
Yeah, so with GoldenEye for me, that was one where my parents were okay with me having the N64 as long as I didn't have any violent games. So I had a bunch of like puzzle solving games or sports games, and my neighbor had GoldenEye. So can you guess what I would do when I went over there?
We play GoldenEye.
We'd play GoldenEye, and I wouldn't bother to solve any of the puzzles because I had those games at home.
Mm-hmm.
So I would just memorize the exact locations and movement patterns of all the NPCs, not just the bad guys, all of the NPCs, and shoot them in the back of the head.
Yeah.
Because at that point, that was the novelty of the game,
Yeah.
and so it winds up actually being the opposite of what they wanted because all they did was make that the novelty. They made that what the game was about for me.
Yeah. Well, it's not their fault for doing that. And honestly, at the end of the day, they got somebody's money, and you had fun. So, like, no complaints there. I will say that adding the 4 people and like making it locally multiplayer made it a lot of fun to just you could ditch that part, like because playing against an AI or a computer can be frustrating. I mean, it can with people too, but it's just kind of nice to have that sort of moment and that camaraderie, even though they are sick and tired of you setting off the remote mines when they keep spawning in that damn bathroom stall.
Yep.
Did you ever play Perfect Dark?
No.
Okay, that one. That's well, my friends loved GoldenEye. We got out of control with Perfect Dark, but like it's sort of like any of the most frustrating weapons that exist in GoldenEye are just like amplified tenfold. We're just like, why did they give you a sniper rifle that shoots through walls? And can see through walls and can aim for you.
Yeah.
Dang, I love that game. Sorry, we went off on a hell of a tangent there.
That's okay.
I should have told you this, that I just go off on tangents when I'm on podcasts.
Oh, no problem. That's kind of what this podcast is about, going off on weird tangents. And then they happen to grow, and we just see where those spores happen to land, and then they start to grow, and then we realize, oh my goodness, we're right back at thalates.
Yeah. Right?
Although I'm still trying to figure out biologically how spore counters on a fungus create plants.
Yeah, it's a little weird. Although I don't think they've actually settled on what a sapling is.
It's originally supposed to be a sapling. In fact, there were tokens that were made by an East Coast group that made some of the original Magic tokens. I think it was before Odyssey Block. Like Matt Humphreys, I think, was one of them. But they made tokens that were called saplings, not saprolings. Saprolings were added later by wizards.
Well, if we're talking Odyssey Block, like saplings predate Odyssey Block by quite a bit.
Right, the original name was supposed to be sapling, but they couldn't get the name, so they called it saproling instead.
Okay.
They were dual-sided tokens that were made.
Okay. But yeah, like I don't quite get that whole flavor either. Although maybe it's like the whole lichen thing that we were talking about, where like the fungus and it's an alga, and I can't remember what that exactly is. I want to say it's some kind of plant, but like they form a symbiotic relationship. So, it could be just that.
Hmm.
And I mean, there's also the whole thing of fungi breaking stuff down in life and, recycling it so that, like, other things can consume it again and,
It certainly could
continue
be.
the cycle of life.
All right, I'm going to put the image in spam if you want to see them. Yeah, there they are.
Sorry, where'd you say you're putting them?
Spam and the skull symbol. They're by Rob Dougherty.
Oh,
I have a bunch of them.
oh, cool. I had no idea.
I got them, I don't remember exactly where. I think they were part of somebody's collection. And then I found a couple places to get them online, including I think Troll and Toad used to have them.
Okay. Very cool.
Yeah, you'd be surprised the sorts of things that sprout up.
Jeez. I mean, yeah. I don't know what else to say. Like, the tribe is great. I think it's cool. Not a lot of people play it. There's not a lot to it. You're kind of stuck in a lot of the things, but I don't know. Like, it's cool and they look super weird.
Absolutely. So thank you very much for being on and talking about fungi and thalids and saprolings and all those little cool interactions. So, where can people find your stuff?
All right. Well, you can find me on Twitter at LennyWooley, LennyWooley. You can find the articles I write, PowerSync, on edhrec.com every other Thursday. I've got one coming out this coming Thursday, which would be February. You know what? Forget it. This is probably going to air after that. Yeah, just find it. It's going to be a cool one. I like it a lot.
The 17th.
Also...
17th, and mine will come out the 16th.
Yep. And then you can also find me streaming Budget Magic many Sundays on the Scrap Trawlers Twitch channel. We do $50 budget decks on a theme.
Oh.
And we have a lot of cool guests and stuff. And then you can also find me every other Monday on the Venture Maidens Twitch channel doing Path and Prophecy. It is a D&D game set in Theros where we have a bunch of players who are also Magic content creators.
So, speaking as somebody who has a number of decks, because I used to have a column about $50 decks, and can be considered a cool player, maybe? Nah.
Yeah,
sometimes have Sundays open. We'll have to see if y'all want me, anyways.
No, yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, have a wonderful day, and thank you for stopping by.